Hey guys, it's Sam, and this is my continuation of my fall series, recommending fall-themed kind of books and characters, and this is Necromancers and Spirits. I was going to do a separate one just on like ghosts and spirits, but then I realized that basically all the Necromancer books also include like ghosts and spirits, as it tends to. Not always, but as it tends to. So this is kind of a combination of those. These are some of my favorites because I love a Necromancer story, and I love any character that can kind of go between life and death, which a lot of Necromancers do with their abilities, so fan favorite of mine. First, you can't talk about Necromancers without talking about Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. This is lesbian Necromancers in space. Obviously, you guys all know that by now. Definitely not heavy on the romance, very heavy on the weird bone shit. And the way it's written and everything, but especially in the first book, Gideon the Ninth, so heavy on the necromancy and the bone shit and the weird bone shit. And they are stuck in a house and doing a lot of like experiments and stuff around necromancy. It kind of like features two childhood enemy rivals kind of thing, but almost everyone in this world worships sort of like death as a concept and the different kinds of death and whatever, and everyone's like a necromancer. It's so weird and good if you haven't read it yet. So yeah. High on the list for Necromancers. Then we have Daughter of Smoke and Bone by Laini Taylor. This is the first book, well, really the whole trilogy is like this, but this is the first book in a YA fantasy trilogy. People talk about this mostly for being like a heavy romance series, and it is. There's like a heavy sort of, what would you call this? Star-crossed lovers kind of thing. So that is definitely present here, but the biggest thing is that this is like monsters slash demons, they're not really demons, they're like monsters, versus angels, and who's good, who's bad there, right? But there's a very heavy necromancy plot within this war between these two, and the ways in which one side of that war tries to like basically reincarnate soldiers. So heavy on the necromancy. Love it. Then the classic necromancy book for me is the Abhorsen series by Garth Nix, the first book being Sabriel. This features characters that can go between life and death and can control spirits within the realm of death, which is essentially the river Styx. There's like 7 different sort of like gates and things. They use magical bells to control those spirits. I love this so much that I have a tattoo of it. A little ghost. It's upside down because your arm hangs like this, right? So yeah, one of my favorite quintessential like first real necromancer book that I ever read, and I stand by this. There's some creepy shit in this for this being YA. It is so fun, and I love like the magic system and everything, so this is sort of like YA horror adjacent because again, some creepy shit comes out of death, and I stand by the first book being my favorite, although I have since reread the second and third one as well, and I've read the 4th book in the series. He's continuing to write a few more of them now, but this one, classic. Love it so much. Then we have Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher. There is one character in particular here who is more of the necromancer character, and it's not our main character, but she ends up having to go on a quest to save her sister from an abusive marriage, and she ends up recruiting some people. One of them is a grave witch, who's essentially a necromancer, and she also has a demon-possessed chicken. So funny. There's a bone dog in here, so again we have some like bone magic necromancy type stuff. There's like a disgraced knight. There's a fairy godmother whose powers don't work the way she wants them to. This is a wonderful gothic dark fairy tale, and the fact that it has a necromancer, thank you so much. She's probably my favorite character in here. I mean, they're all my favorites. I love them all so much. This is like the perfect fall book for sure. Then if you like Gideon the Ninth, or you like the idea of Gideon the Ninth, but you're like, I don't really like sort of sci-fi, Saint Death's Daughter by C.S.E. Cooney. This is such a weird book. I've talked about this at length in the past when I read it like 2 years ago. This is following a woman from a kind of disgraced necromancer family, and her family has fallen into financial ruin, and she also like can't be around death or like harm. Like when it happens, because she has like a visceral reaction to it, and her family has fallen into ruin, and she needs to save her family home, which also has like a revenant attached to it that is like her best friend, and so like a lot of stuff ensues from there. But she has a malevolent spirit that she has to learn more necromancy stuff from, her grandpa, who's like evil incarnate and trapped in like a tomb. There's a lot of weird bird magic that's happening. Her love interest is a non-binary person who worships like a fire god in some like reincarnate way. There's a lot of weird shit in here, but there's a lot of weird bone death shit, and then weird bird magic, and then weird other magic, and like there's a lot here. So if you like weird books about necromancers, this is up your alley. And then a book I thought I owned I owned a copy of it, and I don't know where it is, and if I got rid of it, that's like really weird because it is one of my favorite books, even though it's a YA book. I don't know why I would have gotten rid of it. Anyway, The Archived by V.E. Schwab, or Victoria Schwab. They were writing under Victoria at this point. This is a story about a young woman who works with, like, in a library, which is essentially like where they keep spirits, or like it's bodies, it's spirits, they're not really connected to the bodies, but it's another between life and death situation, and she can kind of go in this between space where the spirits and stuff are, and some are escaping, and then they like become corporeal in like the real world and can just wreak havoc. And so she is having to figure out like why that is happening. I am very bothered that I don't know where this book is, because I do not know why I would have gotten rid of it. Did I lend this to someone? They never gave it back to me. And this series might like be out of print now. I have to solve this problem off screen. But again, another between life and death story, working with spirits, that kind of thing, and I really like this. Sadly, just treat this as a standalone, because there is a second book, but they don't plan to finish this series, which is tragic because it's really good. And lastly, we have a book series that could cover a lot of different paranormal creatures depending on how far I go with this series before the end of the month. But that's the Anita Blake Vampire Hunter series by Laurel K. Hamilton that I've talked about ad nauseum over the years. This is a adult paranormal romance kind of series. It starts out way more paranormal horror adjacent and then goes more into like paranormal romance, erotica later on in the series. But the first like 10 books or so, very solid. And our main character is a necromancer. She's actually an animator. She raises zombies. But then also she eventually is able to control like a bunch of other kinds of spirits, and it's very cool and very good. So this could be also recommendation for a bunch of other witches are in it, vampires are in it, shifters, whatever. But because our main character is actually a necromancer, I think this follows that necromancy one the best. So yeah, those are some of my favorite books about necromancers and spirits and characters that can control those spirits. Comment down below and let me know some of your favorite necromancer books. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.